When digging into the biblical figure named Rufus, two main scriptural references come to light. Mark chapter 15 verse 21 and Romans chapter 16 verse 13. Jehovah's Witnesses, drawing from the Bible and related research in their publications, such as the Insight on the Scriptures and various articles on jw.org, see in Rufus an intriguing figure who, though mentioned only briefly, reflects a personal touch within the early Christian congregation. Below is a deeper examination of what Jehovah's Witnesses generally understand about Rufus, gleaned from these Bible references and associated commentaries. 1. Scriptural mentions of Rufus. Mark chapter 15 verse 21. And they compelled a passerby, a certain Simon of Cyrene who was coming from the countryside, the father of Alexander and Rufus, to carry his torture stake. Here, Mark identifies Rufus as one of the sons of Simon of Cyrene, the man who was forced by Roman soldiers to carry Jesus' torture stake, often rendered cross, in mainstream Bibles, en route to Golgotha. Mark was the only gospel writer who included the detail about Simon's children, Alexander and Rufus. Why mention them? Jehovah's Witnesses frequently note that the writer Mark was likely addressing a community of believers who might already have known Simon's family. By naming Alexander and Rufus, Mark was hinting that these sons were recognized or respected in the Christian congregation, so the reference would ring a bell among early Christians. This aligns with an early Christian tradition that Mark wrote his gospel account with a Roman audience partly in mind. It's plausible that early Christians in Rome knew Rufus personally. Romans chapter 16 verse 13. Greet Rufus, chosen in the Lord, and his mother and mine. The Apostle Paul, in his letter to Roman Christians, greets Rufus specifically and also makes the heartfelt reference, his mother and mine. This indicates that Rufus's mother had shown maternal kindness or hospitality to Paul at some point. The fact that Paul singles out Rufus as chosen in the Lord underscores that he was a faithful, respected member of the Christian congregation in Rome. Jehovah's Witnesses recognize this passage as evidence of the close-knit, familial bonds that existed within congregations of the first century. Paul's expression, his mother and mine, suggests a warm personal relationship, possibly indicating that Rufus's mother had extended her home or care to Paul in a time of need. 2. Are the two Rufus references about the same person? Many scholars and Bible commentators, including those referred to in Jehovah's Witnesses study materials, consider it quite likely that the Rufus mentioned in Mark chapter 15 verse 21 and the Rufus of Romans chapter 16 verse 13 are the same individual. The connection is not categorically proven, because the New Testament does not explicitly say they are identical. However, the following points often lead to this conclusion. Rarity of the name. Rufus is not exceedingly common in the Bible. While it appears occasionally in broader Greco-Roman society, having that specific name singled out in both Mark's Gospel and in Paul's letters strengthens the possibility they point to the same person. Time and place. Mark's Gospel was likely written at a time, some dated to the 50s to 60s CE, that overlaps with or precedes Paul's writing of Romans, circa 56 CE. The Rufus known to Roman Christians could very well be the son of Simon of Cyrene mentioned earlier. Recognition by the congregation. When Mark named Rufus, it implies Rufus was known among Christians. Later, Paul greeted him by name in a personal letter to the congregation in Rome, indicating that Rufus was indeed a recognized member. Jehovah's Witnesses generally view these indicators as enough to make a reasonable connection between the two references. 3. Rufus's family background and significance. As the son of Simon of Cyrene, Rufus could have grown up hearing about his father's close brush with Jesus' final moments before his crucifixion. Jehovah's Witnesses point out how that experience might have influenced Simon and his family. Life-altering encounter. Simon's forced act of carrying Jesus' execution stake could have moved him to learn more about Jesus' identity as the Messiah. If that led Simon to become a Christian, his sons Alexander and Rufus might have followed suit. Impact on early congregations. If they became Christians, Alexander and Rufus likely developed reputations as devoted believers. Their father's unique experience would have given them an interesting connection to Jesus' final journey. Mother as a spiritual support. Romans chapter 16 verse 13 references Rufus's mother as someone who had become like a mother to the Apostle Paul. Jehovah's Witnesses interpret that to mean she showed real compassion and practical support, perhaps providing Paul with lodging, food, and emotional encouragement. Such familial bonds were not uncommon among the earliest Christians, who often formed close networks of mutual care. 4. Lessons drawn by Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses, through publications like The Watchtower and Awake, or resources on jw.org, draw a few helpful lessons from Rufus's story. Power of an indirect encounter. Rufus's father Simon didn't initially volunteer to carry Jesus' execution stake. He was compelled by Roman soldiers. Yet out of that seemingly random event came a household of Christians, Simon, presumably, and at least one son, Rufus, who was later praised by Paul. This underscores the belief that exposure to Jesus and his teachings, even in unexpected circumstances, can change lives profoundly. Please share and like and please subscribe.